What's on my mind is belief, believing in yourself and how powerful that is, and that is something you can actually shift, right? A lot of people don't spend the time to actually break down the concept of believing in yourself. Self-belief is so powerful. It is a driving force of how you live your life. It's almost like integrated into your very being and will change your path. It will change how you interact with the world. It's not just like you suddenly think, oh yeah, I can do stuff. It's a belief is a way of being. It's not the same as having a thought. It's not the same as just thinking something is true. It's knowing it is true. And the same way that you know you're a human being, the same way you know that you're watching this video right now, it's not something you have to cognitively be aware of. It's just known, right? So it just exists. And when you can shift your belief to believe you can do anything you want, you can achieve the things you want, believe in your value and these kind of different elements, your life will improve massively, massively. It's really started to shift in me when I was early 20s. So I remember I read a book by Tony Robbins. I believe it's Awake the Giant Within. And in the book, there's this theory about the pillars of belief and how you can consciously change your belief system. So right now, you most days, maybe your whole life, maybe you've never thought about it, you have certain beliefs which are the pillars of your reality. And one of those beliefs, as we said, you have a belief that you're a human. You have a belief that when you go home at night, you're going to go back to your house. But what if one day, ideally this doesn't happen, but one day you went back and your house had burnt down? One of your pillars of belief would be shattered, right? Something like that could potentially trigger trauma, or your reality will change, right? So your belief on reality, you had a belief that when you go home in the evening, you go back to your house and you're safe. That belief is shattered because of your experience. The beliefs are malleable, and that's an example of your belief changing without your consent. But you can change your beliefs by being aware that you can change your beliefs and then deciding what you want to believe in. The idea is you have these different pillars for each belief, and a certain number of pillars make you believe in it. So whether it's you've seen something, you've heard something, you've experienced it, each pillar makes that belief stronger and more formidable. Paradox with believing in yourself is so many people need proof before they believe in themselves. Sometimes even then, proof doesn't make them believe in themselves because it's a way of being. So you could achieve something and then still think, actually, it doesn't mean that much, or that was a fluke, or yeah, I got lucky and I managed to do that. And what you're doing here is you're constantly capping your self-worth, but your self-worth is how you interact with other people. It's unspoken, and it's how you engage with life. It's how you engage with the world, and other people can sense that. They're attracted to that. Your energy is attractive because it takes work to build self-worth. It's not something you're just born with. The only person you have to prove anything to ever really is yourself. We might think we need to prove things to other people, but actually we're the ones who are living our lives and we're always with ourselves. So going back to the belief here, when you unlock self-belief, for me anyway, I can't help but have this driving force where I just unrelentingly believe in people and those around me. I want to see people unlock the best for them, because you realize how many people are living in a way where they just think it's not for them. They think it's not meant for them. They think they're not meant to go and do the things that they dream about, or they're not meant to be that confident person who engages with someone in that way, or just someone who enjoys life in a different way, right? People are capped because we've been conditioned to think it's not doable. This conditioning is ingrained socially. So the issue is, once something's ingrained socially, it spreads. It's enforced unconsciously, it's enforced passively by others who aren't doing those things. A perfect example of this is if you're trying to improve yourself, there's people who will push back against that. They have the fleeting mentality. What you'll notice about a lot of these things is maybe they'll say like, oh, like eating's one of the only pleasures in life, drinking's one of the only pleasures. They're all fleeting. They're all pleasure-based, that they need to be refueled. They're not able to live for like a kind of a lasting glow. It's about the pleasure in the moment. And I'm not saying to get rid of that at all. I'm trying to give an example here of how people will put their own conditioning onto you, and when that's surrounding you, it makes it harder for you to form yourself, to form your own mold, to stand out as who you are, because other people aren't doing that. Yet everyone, I believe, I'm sure most people have the essence. Everyone has their own essence. Everyone's uniquely different, and this is what's hard as well with going to school and having pressures from other people, social pressures, media, is people want to fit in as opposed to stand out. Okay, and fitting in simply just doesn't exist. What you do in that situation is you're just squeezing your essence, you're suffocating your essence. The thing that will make you feel alive is expressing who you truly are, right? Without preconceptions of what other people might think, without putting yourself down. You're a certain way, you like certain things, you sound a certain way, you speak a certain way. That's who you are. And the sooner that you accept that and embrace it, which can be difficult, the sooner that you start truly living life, because you're now in tune with your very essence. I spent many years fighting against what I was. So then of course I never felt content. I always felt anxious. I always thought there was more to be had to fulfill me. And it's because I just wasn't unlocking this. I'd put a cap on who I actually was out of, I guess, fear of being perceived a certain way. But I'm the only one perceiving me that way. You can never know what other people think. So when you unlock this sense of belief in yourself, how can you do this? For me, it's genuine steps were researching and reading about other people who did things that were technically impossible. So I have quite an existential way of viewing things, which I then integrate into just the way I see life day to day. So an example of what I mean by that is I've spent a lot of time just pondering or being or, experiencing reality without being caught up in distractions. So not always working or always watching something or always thinking. What I mean by that is meditating and sitting. When you start to think about these kind of questions, such as like, why are we here? Who am I? Think about time, think about experience, all of these things, you realize how impossible life is. Okay, so life is an impossibility, yet we measure everything by chance. But the foundation of that is impossible. What is the chance that you exist right now and you're listening to this and you've assigned that to make sense of your reality? Most of us have assigned that to the idea that, oh, it's just a fluke and I just happen to be here because of a big bang and then I'm here. So if you have just said, oh, it's just a fluke and it's just a chance and it was the big bang, your interpretation of reality is that things can begin and end, because there's a big bang and then this is happening. So there must be something before the big bang. There must be something before that. So what was at the very beginning? And then if you go to the very beginning, something cannot come from a state of true nothing. If you imagine just pure nothingness, you can't even imagine it because you're thinking of something. You can't imagine darkness because that's still something. Nothingness is incomprehensible to us, to this experience we're having. If something came from a state of nothing, there must have been potential for something. There must have been space, there must have been some kind of form. So what does this mean? It means time doesn't exist. It means there cannot be beginning and end. On the scale outside of this experience as humans, outside of our experience of living and dying, and we'll tie this back in a second. So why is this important? It breaks a fundamental way of viewing existence. You realize there is just infinity, and we can't grasp that either in this form because we need things to begin and end. And this is where we start to draw it in. So how are you able to have this experience of being human? Well, things need to begin and end, and that's everything. Suffering, pleasure, love, lack of love. If you just existed in a state for eternity, there would no longer be a value to that. This is something to notice in life. Things are valued by the fact that they end one day. If something's rarer, it costs more money. If you don't get to see your family as often, when you see them, you're going to most likely appreciate that more. If you go and run outside in the cold and the rain, guess what? You're going to feel pretty good when you come back in and you have a hot bath. But if you're warm already and have a hot bath, you don't get that same satisfaction. So this is the duality. Basically, I'm just giving different examples of duality. And the whole point of that rant I just went on is to start giving you the perspective of what truly is impossible. What is impossibility? Because this reality, this whole thing right now is impossible, yet it's happening. And it's just funny that for us to have the experience, it makes sense. We need to be able to have an experience where we're not constantly thinking about how crazy everything is. We've made it normal. This is how so many people write themselves off as well. They haven't soaked in or they haven't felt how crazy it is that they are aware. How are you aware? And then what is the awareness? These are things that by thinking down these paths for some years now, you get a different idea of impossibility. To believe that coincidences even happen means you believe that reality is a coincidence, which means you're like the ultimate gambler. You're the biggest gambler the universe has ever met, or you're just extremely cynical. This isn't going to necessarily be a popular opinion because this is how so many people view reality. But if you think coincidences happen, you think the baseline for existence is essentially a coincidence. You think it's all chance. What is chance? We don't know. We've decided these things for our limited senses, for our limited experience. We've decided that this is how it works. And that's just not how I see things. Because when you do that, you're refusing to look at the bigger picture. You haven't spent long enough delving into those depths. And again, this is all my opinion. This is all my own experience. I think everyone has their own way of viewing things, and that's how life is meant to be. But this has benefited me the most. Now, with that perspective, with those things that I've just said, if we go back to believing in yourself, what you can then do is look at people who have created things. So inventors, I often go back to this. Inventors are a great thing to look into because they've created something from nothing. Now, so think of the engine, think of cars, think of planes, think of technology of any scale. They're all things that someone thought about. They were not yet physically tangible, and then they brought them into form. Inventing the light bulb is a great example. So he had thousands of failed experiments and then achieved it. So how obsessive do you have to be thinking of a concept that doesn't exist, yet you're doing it over and over, and then boom, it's real now. So that's become reality. So the power of our thoughts, we underestimate them. Why am I using these examples of inventors? Because they believed in themselves without proof. They believed in creating a concept before they'd done it. The fact that it was before they did it is the important part, because this is how you curate self-belief before you've achieved those things. Compare your experience and compare your life to others. What have they done? What have they achieved? Do you have people on pedestals? Destroy, obliterate those pedestals right now. Everyone is just a human having an experience, okay? And this is another plague, in my opinion, of social media and media in general, is celebrities and idols and artists being put on pedestals. They're just people. And sure, they have some of them express great art. I love music, I love movies, I love all of these things. But then that doesn't somehow make them above you. I can't remember that exact quote, but it's like never meet your heroes, maybe. But it's very important you do that. It doesn't mean you can't admire people and admire certain things they've done. I'm saying take the pedestals out from underneath them. Everyone has become where they are through their experiences and how they've interpreted them. Musicians are great at expressing a state of creativity, a state of flow. So many people are cut off from that because of how they've been told they should be, from trying to fit in. And that's a fear of expression. Just go to work, get paid, give myself short-term pleasure, low-key anxiety all the time, get through life, repeat the cycle. And really, everyone has access to that state of creativity. We are all creative beings. The nature of existence is creativity. It's constant form, it's constant evolution, it's constant expression. And artists tune into that flow, but really everyone has the capability to do that. So the reason I say take them off the pedestals is because it's important you realize that you are just as capable as anyone else has ever been, right? And sure, maybe you don't have the genetics to be the best sprinter in the world, but I imagine that's not what you want anyway. You have a calling, even though you may not be able to see the path to get there, you become more aligned with that, okay? And every step you're taking is actually getting you closer. I use the contrast of the existentialism to then make it seem almost absurd to not have that self-belief, right? And if you look in a position, maybe you're in a job and you're unsatisfied, maybe you feel like they don't appreciate you or you're not reaching your potential. That's the truth. If that's how you feel, that's the reality, right? But there's something within you holding you back. Maybe you don't think you actually do deserve more. Maybe you're unsure. I'm telling you, look at what people have achieved and then look at what position you want to be in. I'm afraid to say so many systems, so many companies benefit from this lack of self-belief. Okay, it means that they have effective workers who don't question the system, who don't drive for more. And then what this does is it filters the few people who do, and it's just this like recycling system of the few people who drive to the top these people can often be narcissists or sociopaths as well, because they're willing to throw other people under the bus and they don't empathize with other people as effectively. They often filter to the top. We have so many people who aren't tuned into their belief, and it doesn't have to be work related. It can be a hobby. I remember thinking I would love to play guitar, but it's just not something that I do. What does that mean? That's a belief that's formed in me from experiences I've had. I thought I'm someone else. I'm like, no, yeah, I'm just not, yeah, I just guess I'm not a creative person. Insane. I picked up a guitar for the first time 2 years ago, and now I play most days and I love it. I play for myself. It's extremely therapeutic. I love the sound of it. I love coming up with songs. I've even started singing recently. Again, something I would have told myself I would never do. That was a belief. That was a belief that I was unconscious of, which was dictating my life. It meant I wasn't engaging in things that were fulfilling for me. So this has been quite an intense rant today. Thank you so much for watching, and believe in yourself. Believe in other people. And if you're far from that place, try taking some of the advice I said, looking into what people have achieved. Use the existential lean, right? Look at the absurdity of your existence right now, and yet how things line up perfectly, right? And we call them coincidences. But, the impossibility of existence, and then the impossibility of that thing happening at that exact time, I'll leave it up to you to decide what you think of that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I wish you the best as always. And if you want to discuss with me in the comments, I'll be more than happy to. Thank you for watching. Take care.